The silence of space shattered as 200 colossal warships tore through the fabric of reality itself. The Draconian armada materialized above Earth like dark angels of death, their massive hulls gleaming with an otherworldly metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Each vessel stretched nearly a kilometer in length, bristling with cannon arrays that could crack planets in half. Admiral Korvax stepped across the polished floor of his command bridge, his reptilian features twisted in disgust as he gazed at the small blue world spinning below. His scales, dark as midnight with crimson edges, caught the glow of holographic displays showing Earth's pathetic defenses. Behind him, dozens of Draconian officers worked at crystalline control panels, their clawed hands dancing across surfaces that pulsed with alien energy. 17 worlds have fallen before our might, Korvax hissed to his second-in-command Commander Vextar. And now we face more than this. He gestured dismissively at the tactical readouts. Their largest weapons barely register on our sensors, chemical propellants and crude fusion devices. How did such primitives ever leave their own atmosphere? The flagship's massive viewing screen displayed Earth in perfect detail, swirling white clouds, vast blue oceans and brown-green continents that held billions of unsuspecting lives. Around the fleet, smaller Draconian fighters zipped between the capital ships like metallic hornets, their pilots eager for the coming slaughter. Far below on Earth's surface, Lieutenant Kim Hyun-soo felt his world change forever. The young officer stood on the observation deck of Osan Air Base south of Seoul, watching through military-grade binoculars as impossible shapes blotted out familiar constellations. His breath formed small clouds in the cold night air as he counted the enemy. Vessels, 23, 2014, no, wait. He adjusted the focus, his hands shaking despite his training. Captain Park, sir, I count at least 50 ships in just this section of sky. Captain Park Ji-woo grabbed his secure radio, his weathered face grim with the weight of what he was seeing. At 42, he had served in the Korean military for over 2 decades, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Seoul Command, this is Osan Base. We have visual confirmation of massive alien fleet in Earth orbit. Repeat, we have hostile alien presence confirmed. The radio crackled with static before a tense voice responded. Osan Base, how many vessels? Park looked at his lieutenant, who was still counting through the binoculars. Hyun-soo held up both hands twice, then showed 8 fingers. Command, we estimate over 200 ships. Each one appears to be several times larger than our biggest aircraft carriers. Across the Pacific, similar scenes played out at military installations worldwide. At NORAD headquarters in Colorado, radar operators watched in stunned silence as their screens filled with contacts that shouldn't exist. In Moscow, generals stared at satellite feeds showing the alien armada from multiple angles. Every major observatory on Earth turned their telescopes skyward, astronomers abandoning their research to document humanity's first contact with an obviously hostile alien force. In Tokyo, Dr. Lee So-young worked frantically in her quantum physics laboratory at the University of Tokyo. At 35, she was one of the world's leading experts in exotic energy fields, but her equipment was registering readings that defied everything she thought she knew about physics. Strange energy patterns rippled across her monitors, unlike anything in her databases. This is impossible, she muttered, adjusting her glasses as she studied the data streams. Her long black hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, forgotten in her focus. These energy signatures are synchronized with biological patterns, almost like... She paused, her eyes widening. Like brainwaves. Her research assistant, Dr. Yoon Hai-ri, looked up from her own workstation. Professor, the quantum field fluctuations are increasing. Whatever those ships are doing up there, it's affecting space-time at the subatomic level. Before So-young could respond, every screen in the laboratory flickered. A new signal overwhelmed their instruments, broadcasting on frequencies that human technology had barely begun to explore. The voice that emerged spoke in perfect emotionless English, though similar broadcasts went out in every human language simultaneously. Inhabitants of the third planet, you have been found wanting. Your species shows promise as a workforce, but your military capabilities are laughably inadequate. You have 72 of your planet's rotational periods to surrender unconditionally. Lay down your weapons, gather in your population centers and prepare for processing. Resistance will result in total annihilation. This is your only warning. The message repeated 3 times before cutting to silence, leaving humanity to confront its new reality. At the United Nations building in New York, Major Choi Min-ho coordinated with military attachés from around the globe. The 38-year-old officer had seen combat in 3 different theaters, but as he watched world leaders argue through video conferences, he felt something he'd never experienced before. Deep in his mind, like an echo from some forgotten dream, a voice that wasn't his own whispered words he didn't understand. "The children must not be harmed," the voice said. "The awakening begins now." Min-ho shook his head, thinking stress was making him hallucinate. But around the world, in places as diverse as rural Korean villages and bustling Indian cities, ordinary people were hearing similar whispers. Shop owner Kim Tae-hyung in Busan, student nurse Park Soo-bin in Daegu, and taxi driver Lee Sang-ho in Incheon all paused in their daily routines as ancient voices stirred in their consciousness. Above them all, the Draconian fleet waited with predatory patience, unaware that their presence had triggered something far older and more dangerous than humanity's crude weapons. The countdown to surrender had begun, but so had something else entirely, something that would change the fate of both species forever. The countdown clock in Admiral Korvax's command center hit 0 with a sound like breaking glass. Across the bridge, Draconian officers turned their reptilian heads toward their commander, waiting for the order that would end human civilization. Korvax's yellow eyes gleamed with anticipation as he raised his clawed hand. "Begin the cleansing," he commanded, his voice echoing through the ship's bio-neural communication system. 200 assault craft detached from the main fleet like deadly seeds falling from metal trees. Each ship was a masterpiece of destruction, equipped with plasma cannons that could melt steel and energy shields that had never been breached. The pilots, their scales gleaming under the crimson battle lighting, guided their vessels toward Earth's major population centers with practiced precision. In Seoul, the first wave arrived at dawn. 20 Draconian fighters screamed through the morning sky, their engines leaving trails of superheated air. The ships looked like mechanical dragons, all sharp angles and glowing energy cores, as they took positions above the sprawling city of 10 million souls. Captain Park Ji-woo stood on the roof of his command center, watching the alien craft through his binoculars. His radio crackled with panicked reports from across the city. Citizens were flooding into subway stations and underground shelters, but everyone knew there was nowhere to hide from weapons that could level city blocks. "All units, maintain defensive positions," Park ordered, though he knew their anti-aircraft missiles would be useless against alien shields. "Protect the evacuation routes at all costs." Lieutenant Kim Hyun-soo joined him on the rooftop, his young face pale but determined. "Sir, they're charging their weapons. Energy readings are off the charts." The lead Draconian fighter began its attack run, diving toward the city center with its plasma cannons glowing like miniature suns. The pilot, a veteran of dozen conquered worlds, selected his first target and prepared to unleash destruction that would kill thousands in seconds. Then something impossible happened. The fighter's engines sputtered and died. Its weapon systems flickered and went dark. The ship tumbled from the sky like a broken toy, crashing into the Han River with a tremendous splash that sent water cascading over the riverbanks. "What the hell?" Park whispered, lowering his binoculars in shock. Similar scenes played out across Seoul as 2 more fighters suffered complete system failures. Their pilots ejected in escape pods, splashing down in the river and city streets, their faces showing the same confusion as their human enemies. Lieutenant Hyun-soo noticed something that made his skin crawl with excitement and fear. Every time a ship malfunctioned, there were crowds of people on the ground looking up at it with intense focus. Office workers who should have been running for cover stood on rooftops with their eyes fixed on the alien vessels. Students gathered in university courtyards, staring at the sky with an expression of deep concentration. "Captain," Hyun-soo said slowly, I think the civilians are doing something to those ships. Across the city, taxi driver Lee Sang-ho had abandoned his cab in the middle of traffic. He stood with dozens of other people in Gangnam Square, all of them looking up at the same Draconian fighter. Without speaking or planning, they focused their minds on a single thought: fall from the sky. The alien ship obeyed, its systems shutting down one by one, as if responding to their collective will. In Tokyo, Dr. Lee So-young's laboratory equipment went completely insane. Every monitor showed energy readings that violated the laws of physics, while her quantum field detectors registered impossible spikes that synchronized perfectly with human brain activity patterns. "Professor," her assistant, Dr. Yoon Hai-ri, called out, pointing at the main display. "The readings are strongest wherever people are gathered together." So-young grabbed her secure phone and dialed her colleague in Seoul. Dr. Kang Woo-jin answered on the first ring, his voice tight with excitement and fear. "So-young, are you seeing this? The quantum field fluctuations are directly linked to human neural activity. It's as if people's brains are somehow interfering with the alien technology." "That's impossible," So-young replied, even as her instruments confirmed the same phenomenon. "Human brain waves are too weak to affect advanced electronics, let alone alien spacecraft. Tell that to the 12 ships that just crashed in Seoul," Woo-jin shot back. "The pilots are alive, but their technology just stopped working, and it only happens when groups of humans focus on them." Meanwhile, in Manhattan, Major Choi Min-ho experienced something that challenged everything he believed about reality. As he coordinated evacuation efforts from the emergency command center, he suddenly knew exactly where the next Draconian ship would fall. The knowledge came from nowhere, like a whisper in his mind that spoke in a voice he didn't recognize but somehow trusted completely. "Clear the intersection of 5th and 42nd, he barked into his radio. "Incoming crash site in 30 seconds. His subordinates looked at him strangely, but they followed orders. Exactly 30 seconds later, a Draconian assault craft plummeted from the sky and smashed into the empty intersection. Its hull cracked and powerless. The pressure in Minho's skull intensified, bringing with it flashes of knowledge he shouldn't possess. He could sense the locations of every alien ship over the city, feel their systems failing one by one as ordinary New Yorkers gathered on rooftops and in parks to stare at their would-be destroyers. Above Earth, Admiral Korvax watched his tactical display with growing horror. Red markers indicated failed systems across his fleet. Squadron 7 over Seoul had lost all its fighters. Squadron 12 over Tokyo was down to half strength. Reports flooded in from every major attack group, ships falling from the sky, their advanced technology rendered useless by some unknown force. "Status report!" Korvax roared at his science officer, a thin Draconian named Veltar whose scales had gone pale with shock. "Admiral, we're detecting massive quantum field disruptions around the planet. The energy signatures are biological. In nature, it's as if the humans themselves are generating some kind of interference pattern. Impossible! Their technology is primitive. They don't even have basic quantum field manipulation. Sir, it's not their technology. It's them. The humans themselves are somehow affecting our systems on a subatomic level." Korvax's confidence crumbled as the numbers continued to climb. 87 ships had crashed or been forced to retreat. His weapons, which had conquered entire star systems, were useless against an enemy that could disable them, with nothing but focused thought. Far below, in the deepest trenches of Earth's oceans, ancient structures began to glow with soft blue light. Machines that had slept for millions of years stirred to life, their crystalline cores pulsing in rhythm with the collective human consciousness now awakening across the planet. In the hidden chambers beneath the Himalayas, massive geometric patterns carved into living rock began to emit a low harmonic frequency that resonated through the Earth's crust. Similar installations activated in the Amazon rainforest, the Sahara Desert, and the Antarctic ice sheets, all responding to a signal that had been dormant since before human civilization began. The alien invasion had triggered something far older and more powerful than anyone imagined. The Draconian Empire, with all its advanced technology and military might, had awakened a force that would change the fate of both species forever. As Admiral Kovacs ordered a fleet-wide retreat to orbit, he had no idea that his attack had not failed due to superior human technology or military strategy. It had failed because humanity itself was something far more dangerous than any weapon. A species designed to evolve under pressure, and they had just faced their greatest threat in history. The awakening had only just begun. The ocean floor trembled as something impossible began to rise from the deepest trenches of the Pacific. Dr. Lee So-young gripped the rail of her research vessel as massive sonar contacts appeared on her screens, each one defying everything she knew about marine geology. "Professor, you need to see this," Dr. Yoon-hae called from the sonar station, her voice tight with disbelief. "These structures, they're geometrically perfect. Too perfect to be natural." So-young rushed to the display, her eyes widening. As the sonar painted a picture of something that belonged in a science fiction movie, not the real world. Rising from the abyssal depths was a complex of interconnected towers and pyramids, each surface covered in patterns that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. The entire structure stretched for kilometers, easily the size of downtown Tokyo. "The materials are reflecting sonar in ways that shouldn't be possible," Hairi continued, adjusting the equipment settings. "It's like they're made of crystallized energy or something equally impossible." Across the globe, similar discoveries were being made. Satellite imagery showed massive crystalline spires breaking through ice sheets in Antarctica, their surfaces glowing with soft blue light. In the Amazon rainforest, ancient pyramids emerged from beneath centuries of vegetation, their smooth walls covered in symbols that seemed to move when observed directly. The Sahara Desert revealed geometric patterns carved into bedrock, patterns that extended for hundreds of miles in perfect mathematical precision. In the Himalayas, Major Choi Min-ho led a joint international expedition to investigate the largest emergence. The crystalline spire stretched 3 kilometers into the thin mountain air, its faceted surface reflecting the afternoon sun in ways that hurt to look at directly. Local guide Kim Tae-hyung, a weathered man in his 60s who knew every trail in the region, stared at the structure with recognition rather than surprise. "My grandfather told stories about this place," Tae-hyung said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of inherited memory. "He called them the sleeping guardians, said they would wake when the sky burned with foreign fire." Min-ho felt that familiar pressure building in his skull again, the same sensation he'd experienced in New York, when he somehow knew where the alien ships would crash. But now it was stronger, accompanied by whispers in a language he didn't recognize but somehow understood. "Major," one of his team members called out, pointing at the base of the spire. "There's an opening here. It wasn't there 5 minutes ago." They. Entrance had appeared silently, a doorway of perfect darkness that seemed to absorb light itself. Min-ho approached cautiously, his military training warring with an inexplicable urge to walk straight inside. The whispers in his mind grew stronger, more welcoming. Meanwhile in Seoul, Captain Park Ji-woo was dealing with his own impossible situation. The command center's lights had been flickering for the past hour, and his equipment was registering energy signatures that made no scientific sense. Lieutenant Kim Hyun-soo worked frantically at his station, trying to make sense of readings that seemed to indicate reality itself was bending around their location. That's when the air in the center of the room began to shimmer like heat waves, rising from hot pavement. "Sir," Hyun-soo whispered, backing away from his console, "something's materializing in here." The shimmer intensified, taking on shape and substance. What emerged was clearly not human, though it walked on 2 legs and had recognizable features. The being stood nearly 8 feet tall, with skin that seemed to contain actual starlight, tiny points of brilliance, moving beneath a surface that was simultaneously transparent and solid. Its eyes were pools of deep space, ancient and filled with knowledge that spanned millennia. Both officers reached for their weapons, but their hands stopped moving before they could draw. Not from fear, but from a sudden understanding that this being meant no harm. "We are the architects," the entity spoke, though its mouth didn't move. The words appeared directly in their minds, carrying with them emotions and concepts that human language couldn't express. "Long have we slumbered, waiting for this moment. We who shaped your species for a purpose, you are only now beginning to understand." Dr. Kang Woo-jin, who had been working nearby on quantum field analysis, dropped his equipment and pulled out a recording device. His hands shook as he documented everything, knowing he was witnessing the most important moment in human history. "Your people call this first contact," the architect continued, its mental voice somehow conveying both infinite patience and urgent necessity. "But in truth, we have never been apart. We are your creators, your guardians, and now your guides as you become what you were always meant to be." The being gestured, and holographic images filled the air around them. They showed Earth as it was millions of years ago, when early human ancestors were still primitive apes living in caves. But in the images, tall figures moved among them, beings of light and wisdom, who carefully guided evolution along specific paths. Humanity was designed for this purpose, the architect explained, as the images shifted to show DNA strands being modified with impossible precision, to be the galaxy's ultimate defenders. Your consciousness, when properly awakened, can manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. No weapon can stand against a unified human will. The truth hit them like physical blows. Every human alive carried dormant genetic modifications, sleeping capabilities that activated only under extreme threat. The Draconian invasion hadn't just triggered humanity's fight-or-flight response. It had awakened powers that had been waiting millions of years to emerge. Across Earth, the awakening accelerated beyond all control. In Busan, store clerk Jung Da-hee was stacking shelves when she noticed a can of soup floating in mid-air. She'd been thinking about how much easier her job would be if she could move things without touching them, and apparently now she could. In Incheon, taxi driver Lee Sang-ho discovered his new ability during rush-hour traffic. Frustrated by a particularly stubborn traffic jam, he focused on the cars ahead and watched in amazement as they began moving aside on their own, creating a clear path through the congestion. Teacher Shin Yu-jin at Seoul National University found herself knowing exactly what questions her students would ask before they raised their hands. But more than that, she could sense where the remaining Draconian ships were positioned, what their next moves would be, and how vulnerable they were to human mental interference. Perhaps most dramatically, bus driver Park Dong-min was listening to his radio when the broadcast suddenly filled with alien chatter. Without thinking, he concentrated on making the annoying noise stop. 300 kilometers above, an entire Draconian communications array simply shut down, leaving a dozen alien ships unable to coordinate their movements. Admiral Kovacs watched, his fleet's systematic destruction from his flagship's bridge, his confidence completely shattered. His remaining 50 ships weren't just malfunctioning anymore. They were being taken apart piece by forces his science teams couldn't detect, measure, or understand. Weapons systems would shut down permanently. Life support would fluctuate, dangerously. Navigation computers would display impossible readings that made his pilots too dizzy to fly. "Admiral," his science officer reported with barely controlled panic, "we're detecting organized patterns in the energy disruptions. It's as if the entire human population is working together, even though they have no way to communicate or coordinate on this scale." Kovacs stared at the tactical display showing Earth surrounded by the quantum field disruptions. 8 billion human minds were awakening to abilities that made his advanced technology look like primitive stone tools. For the first time in his military career, the conquest of 17 worlds, Admiral Kovacs realized he wasn't facing an enemy he could defeat. He was facing something far more terrifying, an entire species becoming exactly what they were designed to be. The transformation swept across Earth like wildfire, but instead of destruction, it brought miracles that redefined what it meant to be human. In Busan, firefighter Cho Seong-woo stood before a collapsed apartment building where dozens of families were trapped beneath tons of concrete and twisted steel. The building had come down during the latest Draconian attack, and his equipment couldn't reach the survivors fast enough. Seong-woo closed his eyes and felt something incredible flowing through his mind. Without fully understanding how, he reached out with his thoughts and simply lifted. The entire building rose into the air like it weighed nothing at all, floating 20 feet above the ground while rescue teams rushed in to evacuate the trapped civilians. Other firefighters stared in amazement as their colleague held a 1,000-ton structure aloft with nothing but the power of his will. "How are you doing that?" his captain asked, his voice filled with wonder rather than fear. "I don't know," Seung-woo replied honestly, sweat beading on his forehead from the concentration required. "It just felt natural, like I was always supposed to be able to do this." Meanwhile, in Incheon, 20-year-old university student Kim Na-yeon was exploring the wreckage of a Draconian fighter that had crashed in her neighborhood. The alien ship's hull was still warm to the touch, covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change when she looked at them directly. Curious, despite her fear, she placed her palm against the strange metal surface. The moment her skin made contact, her consciousness exploded outward. Suddenly, she was inside the ship's computer systems, swimming through data streams that contained the tactical plans of the entire Draconian fleet. She saw Admiral Korvax's personal logs, his desperate attempts to understand what was happening to his forces, and most importantly, the locations of every remaining alien vessel. "Oh my God," she whispered, pulling her hand back as information flooded her mind. Without even thinking about it, she had downloaded the complete strategic database of an alien civilization. More than that, she had left something behind in their systems, a subtle virus that would spread through their fleet's communication network. Dr. Lee So-young barely had time to process one miracle before the next one occurred. Working alongside the architect guardians in her floating laboratory above the Pacific structures, she watched her instruments register psychic energy levels that broke every known law of physics. "Professor," her research assistant, Park Subin, called out, pointing at the quantum field readings. "The energy output increases exponentially when people work together. It's not just addition, it's multiplication." So-young nodded, connecting to an encrypted video call with Major Choi Min-ho in New York. The Major's face appeared on her screen, but she could see the strain in his eyes. Dark circles showed he hadn't slept, and there was something different about the way he looked at the camera, as if he was seeing far more than just her image. "Major, what's your current status?" she asked. "It's overwhelming, Doctor," Min-ho replied, rubbing his temples. "I can hear the thoughts of every person in Manhattan. 8 million minds all talking at once. If it wasn't for Lieutenant Colonel Kim Jong-sik helping me focus, I think I would have gone insane by now." Behind him, Jong-sik nodded grimly. The older officer had discovered he had a natural talent for mental discipline, somehow able to teach meditation techniques that helped other awakened humans control their new abilities. "Dr. So-young," Min-ho continued, "I think I understand what's happening now. We're not just individuals with psychic powers. We're becoming part of something bigger. Every human mind is like a computer in a massive network, and that network is getting stronger every minute." So-young felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the implications. A collective consciousness spanning the entire planet, 8 billion nodes in a planetary defense system that makes our most advanced computers look like pocket calculators. Above Earth's atmosphere, Admiral Korvax made his final desperate decision. His fleet was down to 30 ships, and those were failing one by one as the human psychic field grew stronger. His officers looked at him with barely concealed panic, their usual confidence shattered by an enemy they couldn't understand or fight. "All ships, prepare for ramming speed," Korvax ordered, his voice cold with determination. "If we cannot conquer this world, we will at least ensure it cannot threaten others. Target the major population centers. We die, but we take them with us." The remaining Draconian vessels turned toward Earth, their engines burning at maximum power as they descended toward cities that held billions of lives. Each ship's hull began to glow red-hot from atmospheric friction as they accelerated past the point of no return. But as they entered the atmosphere, they encountered resistance unlike anything in galactic history. In Detroit, factory worker Song Min-jun was walking home from his shift when he looked up and saw a Draconian ship streaking toward his city like a falling meteor. Without thinking, he reached out with his mind and simply made the ship's hull intangible. The vessel passed harmlessly through buildings and streets like it was made of mist, emerging on the other side of the city before solidifying again and crashing into an empty field. In London, nurse Han So-jin was treating patients in a hospital when alarms began blaring about an incoming ship. As she watched through the window, time seemed to slow around the descending vessel. What should have been a 5-minute death dive stretched into hours, giving the city's population time to evacuate, while the ship crawled through the air at a snail's pace. In rural Korea, farmer O.J. Sung looked up from his rice fields to see multiple ships bearing down on Seoul. He had never studied physics or astronomy, but somehow he knew exactly how to bend space itself. The ships found their trajectories changing mid-flight, their courses redirected away from populated areas and toward empty ocean. Back in Seoul, the architect guardian who had first contacted Captain Park Ji-woo and Lieutenant Kim Hyun-soo revealed the final piece of the puzzle. Its starlight form seemed brighter now, more solid, as if the awakening of humanity was strengthening it as well. "Your species was designed to evolve under pressure," it explained, its mental voice carrying pride and ancient satisfaction. "Each generation stronger than the last, each crisis pushing you closer to your true potential." The Draconian Empire believes they are conquerors, but they have served their purpose perfectly. They have triggered the greatest awakening in galactic history. Lieutenant Hyun-soo stared out the window of their command center, watching the sky itself seem to shimmer with energy. Aurora-like patterns danced between the clouds, visible manifestations of the psychic field that now encompassed the entire planet. "Sir," he said to Captain Park, his voice filled with wonder, "I can feel everyone. Every person on Earth. We're all connected now, aren't we?" Park nodded, tears in his eyes as he experienced the same sensation. 8 billion individual consciousnesses had become something greater than the sum of their parts. Not a hive mind that erased individuality, but a network that enhanced and amplified every human soul. The final phase was beginning, and neither the Draconians nor humanity fully understood what Earth was about to become. Above them, Admiral Korvax's desperate suicide attack was failing in ways that defied all logic, while below an entire species evolved in real time towards something the galaxy had never seen before. The children of Earth were growing up, and the universe would never be the same. The 30 remaining Draconian warships screamed through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars, their hulls glowing white-hot as Admiral Korvax committed his fleet to one final act of destruction. Each vessel carried enough firepower to level entire cities, and their combined impact would crack continents and boil oceans. If the Draconian Empire couldn't have Earth, then no one would. In Seoul, Captain Park Ji-woo felt the exact moment when 8 billion human minds clicked into perfect harmony. The sensation hit him like a wave of warm light, starting in his chest and spreading through every cell in his body. It wasn't like losing himself in a crowd, but rather like discovering he had always been part of something infinitely larger and more beautiful than he had ever imagined. Lieutenant Kim Hyun-soo stood beside him at the command center window, both men watching the impossible unfold in the sky above their city. The burning alien ships suddenly stopped falling, hanging motionless in the air as if the laws of physics had simply decided to take a break. "Sir," Hyun-soo whispered, his voice filled with awe, "they're just floating there." The Draconian vessels began to flicker like mirages in desert heat. One moment they were solid metal death machines, the next they seemed translucent, as if someone was slowly turning down their existence. Admiral Korvax's flagship, a kilometer-long monster bristling with weapons, wavered in and out of reality like a bad television signal. Dr. Lee So-young watched from her research vessel above the Pacific, her instruments going completely insane, as they tried to measure what was happening. The quantum field readings showed reality itself, bending around the alien ships, space and time warping in ways that shouldn't be possible. "Professor," Dr. Yoon Hai-ri called out, her voice tight with excitement and terror. "The energy patterns are unlike anything we've ever recorded. It's like the universe is rewriting itself around those ships." In his Seoul laboratory, Dr. Kang Woo-jin documented everything with shaking hands. His equipment showed the impossible truth. The collective human consciousness was literally editing the fabric of reality, creating new laws of physics that applied only to the Draconian fleet. "They're being phased out of normal space," he reported over the emergency communication network. 8 billion human minds working together are somehow moving those ships into a different dimension entirely. Major Choi Min-ho felt every moment of the process through his enhanced psychic connection to the global consciousness. Standing in Manhattan, he could sense the mental energy of every person on Earth contributing to the effort. It wasn't organized or planned, but rather like a massive choir where everyone instinctively knew their part. In Gangnam, coffee shop owner Kim Min-jae had been serving customers when he suddenly felt compelled to look up at the sky. Without understanding why, he focused his thoughts on the burning ships above Seoul, willing them to simply go away. His mental energy joined with millions of others, each person adding their small contribution to something unimaginably vast. Construction worker Lee Sung-min in Gwangju felt the same pull. He set down his tools and stared at the horizon, where distant fire streaks marked the alien fleet's descent. Like Min-jae, he found himself thinking the same thought over and over: "You don't belong here, go away." In Daejeon Elementary School, teacher Park Hyo-jin gathered her students in the classroom and told them to make a wish that the scary ships would leave. 25 6-year-olds closed their eyes and wished as hard as they could, their pure intentions adding surprising power to the global effort. Across the planet, similar scenes played out in every city, town, and village. Farmers in rural areas, office workers in skyscrapers, fishermen on distant seas, all somehow knew to focus their minds on the same impossible goal: make the invaders vanish. The Draconian ships began to fade more rapidly now, their solid forms becoming ghostly outlines against the sky. Inside his flagship, Admiral Kovacs felt the strange sensation of existing in two places at once. He could still see his bridge crew and their panicked faces, but everything seemed distant and unreal, as if he was viewing it through thick glass. "Admiral," his communication officer called out desperately, "we're losing contact with the other ships. They're disappearing from our sensors." Kovacs rushed to the main viewing screen and watched in horror as his fleet dissolved into nothingness. But he wasn't dead, wasn't even injured. He was simply somewhere else, somewhere that felt like normal space, but wasn't quite right. The stars were wrong, the colors slightly off, and there was an oppressive sense of isolation that chilled his reptilian blood. With growing desperation, he activated the fleet's emergency broadcaster, sending out a signal on all frequencies that would reach every corner of the galaxy. "Emergency broadcast to all Galactic Council members," he transmitted, his voice cracking with fear and confusion. "This is Admiral Kovacs of the Draconian 5th Fleet. Do not approach the third planet of the Sol system. Repeat, do not approach Earth under any circumstances." He paused, struggling to find words for something that defied all logic and experience. "The humans, they are not what they seem. They appear primitive, but they are something far more dangerous than we ever imagined. We are trapped between realities, conscious but unable to return to normal space. Our weapons are useless. Our ships are powerless. Whatever you do, do not attempt conquest of this world. The humans are—" The transmission cut to static as the pocket dimension sealed itself completely, trapping the Draconian fleet in a place that existed alongside normal reality but could never touch it again. Back on Earth, Dr. Lee So-young worked frantically with the Architect Guardians to understand what humanity had become. The ancient beings seemed pleased, but not surprised by what had occurred. "Your species has passed the final test," the lead architect explained, its starlight form, beginning to fade as its purpose was fulfilled. "You have learned to act as one while remaining individuals, to defend without seeking conquest." Student researcher Nam Yu-jung assisted in documenting the new reality they all lived in. Earth was now surrounded by the most powerful psychic field in known space, a protective barrier that could phase entire fleets out of existence while leaving the planet itself untouched. But life on Earth continued in wonderfully ordinary ways. Bus driver Park Dong-min returned to his regular route, picking up passengers and navigating traffic just like always. The only difference was that now he could sense the contentment and hope of everyone on his bus, and sometimes when children fell asleep during the ride, he could make sure they had beautiful dreams, Nurse Han So-jin went back to caring for patients at Seoul National Hospital, but her healing touch now carried genuine power. Broken bones mended faster under her care, and terminal illnesses sometimes simply faded away when she held a patient's hand and wished for their recovery. Every human now carried the potential for miracles, but they used these gifts the same way they had always used their natural talents, to help others, to build better lives, to create rather than destroy. The Architect Guardians began their return to dormancy, their ancient duty finally complete. But before they faded back into the deep places of the earth, they left one final message echoing in every human mind. You are the Guardians now. Protect those who cannot protect themselves. The galaxy depends on your strength, your wisdom, and most importantly, your compassion. Use these gifts well. Across the galaxy, other alien civilizations received Admiral Korvax's warning and spread the word throughout the stars. Earth became known as Forbidden Territory, a world of beings with unimaginable power who could erase entire fleets from existence with nothing but focused thought. But they also learned something else from long-range observations and careful study. These dangerous humans used their incredible abilities not for conquest or domination, but for healing, creating, and protecting those weaker than themselves. They had become something the galaxy had never seen before, a species with godlike power who chose to remain humble servants of peace. The Draconian fleet had vanished because they encountered something they never expected and could never understand. They faced a species that grew stronger through unity rather than division, more powerful through love rather than hate, and truly invincible through the simple human refusal to surrender hope, even in the darkest hours. Earth's children had grown up at last, and the universe was a safer, more beautiful place because of it. The end.